Your Excellency, thank you very much for agreeing to be interviewed for Dobrejdoj de Macedonia Welcome Center magazine. So I'm really honored to do the interview with you, and I will start it off with a question connected to your experience here in Macedonia. So there is no doubt that you have played a very significant role here in Macedonia in many different aspects since the beginning of your service. Could you please summarize for us your experience here in Macedonia, from your first impressions when you came, learning the language, getting to know the culture, to the present political reality? How has your accommodation in the local context developed?
Well, it's a great pleasure to take part in this interview. Thanks very much for coming. And it's a great pleasure also to have the opportunity to say something which I feel very strongly about Macedonia, and that is that one of the reasons I've been able to work with such motivation and energy in this country is that it has made me feel extremely welcome. It's a very beautiful country with very warm people all the way across the country, people that I've developed very good, friendly, close relationships with, and that for me is just wonderful. It's helped enormously that I've been able to speak some Macedonian. We have a very strong policy in the British diplomatic service of ensuring that diplomats, especially ambassadors, go overseas with their local language. So I received tuition in that before I came here, and that's helped me enormously in achieving it. So I'm 3/4 of the way through a 4-year posting, and I occasionally think perhaps it's a sad thing that I only have 1 year left here, but I look at it the other way around. Actually, I've had 3 great years, and I've got 1 more of those to come.
Well, that's a great way of ending this, and thank you for answering this elaborate question. I'm really glad that my home country welcomed you. So, could you tell us more about the specificity of the role British Ambassador to Macedonia? What would you advise your successors or any future candidate who would replace you in this position?
Right, well, I can only really speak from my own experience about what we've done. The embassy covers a wide range of work from commercial work, supporting British companies here in Macedonia, and supporting British investors here as well. Economic work, we follow the economic development of this country. Political work, we follow the political work of this country. And it all comes down in the end to supporting Macedonia in achieving its objectives, essentially. Because Britain's interest in Macedonia is around helping to make Macedonia a stronger country, more secure, more stable, richer, so that it can be a stronger partner for us within Europe. That's really our objective, and that's where most of our work is focused. We also, of course, do other typical diplomatic work, like supporting British citizens who might get into trouble here, tourists or others who find themselves ill or in some other sort of difficult situation. So it's a wide range of typical diplomatic issues, and I would advise my successor to prepare for that. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's the usual diplomatic business, but to prepare thoroughly for it, and of course to learn Macedonian.
Well, that's a great advice. I hope your successors will follow it for the benefit of all, actually. So, we all know that you have developed a very specific and influential Twitter profile. I know for a fact that many people liked your posts describing Macedonia's beauty, but there were some reactions to your core diplomatic statements. So, in your opinion, how useful are the modern forms and channels of communication in your sensitive work nowadays?
Well, I mean, that's an area which has changed dramatically since I became a diplomat almost 30 years ago. In those days, most of the channels of communication were about newspapers and broadcast TV and radio, broadcast media. Today it's a bit about broadcast media, not very much about newspapers, and an awful lot about social media, so Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and so on. And the Foreign Office is very keen that its diplomats overseas become very accomplished users of these new ways of putting messages out and hearing back from the people in the country that we're working in. So they give us a lot of support for it and a lot of encouragement. And it was on that, against that background, that I got engaged with Facebook and Twitter when I came out here. I find it has improved and made much more interesting and exciting the work of a diplomat, because it allows for a very close connection to people in the country in a way that traditional media, the newspapers and TV, don't. You can engage directly with individuals in any part of Macedonia about any subject, and that's really very worthwhile.
Okay, well, thank you for your answer, Your Excellency. So, having closely observed our society and culture, could you please compare the two countries, Great Britain and Macedonia? Are we really substantially different? And what, in your opinion, should or can Macedonia do to make progress in its economy, education, tourism, and all the other pillars of advanced democratic society?
I think I'm going to give a bit of a confusing answer to this question. I think Macedonia is at the same time very similar and very different from the United Kingdom. We're very different because on one level our cultures are different. You have a culture based in southeastern Europe. We have one from northwestern Europe. Our climate is very different. I look out of the window now and it's bright blue sky and it's the warm sun, and I kind of know it's not quite like that in London today. Our geography is very different. Our economies are very different. Our cultural background is very different. But at the same time, we're extremely similar. We both share this European space, and we both have a very large area of overlapping interests. We both have an interest in developing security and developing stability, and working together as partners in order to achieve our wider interests for the people in Macedonia and Britain. So there's a lot of similarity there. And I think that it again makes for a very interesting life for a diplomat, because we have things which are very important to work on in those shared interests, but things which are also challenging and interesting about the differences between us.
So what should Macedonia do, in your opinion, to make progress in its economy, education, tourism, and all the other areas that are the pillars of advanced civil society?
Well, I think that this is the short answer to that is that there is no magic button. You can't just push a button and suddenly Macedonia has a stronger economy. It's a long-term thing. You need a government with a strategic direction, so it has a clear idea of where it wants to be in 10 years' time, 15, 20 years' time. A lot of it, of course, comes down to education. A lot of it comes down to taking opportunities. A lot of it comes down to working together and making the most of your opportunities. But the good news for Macedonia is that there's fantastic opportunity and potential in this country. Every time I go out into the Sharplanina, for example, or down to towns like Ohrid, I see the potential for developing the tourist industry, for example. And then you see the wonderful food products that are moving into the British market, for example, ivar and wine and things like that. And you realise that there is so much more that could be done. That's very good news for Macedonia.
Thank you, Your Excellency. This was a really great answer. So could we move on to culture? That's a really another interesting topic. So the UK has developed and shared the concept of creative industries with the world. Even here in Macedonia, the British Council has engaged with the national cultural authorities to develop a national strategy on creative industries. In your opinion, where is the cultural potential here in Macedonia that can make this sector grow and that can add a practical value to this policy document that's the National Strategy on Creative Industries?
Right. Well, I mean, you're absolutely right about the creative industries in the UK. I believe that in Britain now 9% of all jobs have something to do with the creative economy, and that's particularly in areas like TV and film and architecture and games, that software, those kind of sectors. And there's no reason why the same couldn't happen here in Macedonia as well. I think in Britain our success has been, again, built up over some time, generations in fact, but it's built largely on a basis of education and access to finance for small businesses and people who have ideas to get access to put those ideas into practice and start making money from them. But crucially, it's I think got an enormous amount of inspiration from the diversity of British society. So if you look at the map of where the creative industries businesses are in the UK, a lot of them are in those places which have very diverse populations. And that's no surprise. If you put 4 or 5 people from different parts of the world together with different cultures and different perspectives and different ideas, the creativity that comes out of that can be extremely impressive. And I think coming back to Macedonia, and to answer your question, that really is one area where you have an absolute inbuilt advantage and opportunity, inbuilt potential to develop the creative sector, because you of course share that particular point with the United Kingdom. You're a very diverse society with not just ethnic Macedonians but ethnic Albanians and Vlachs and Bosniaks and Jews and many others as well, who bring different perspectives on things and different ideas. And if you can harness that, then it will feed the creative economy in a very powerful way.
Well, thank you, Your Excellency. It's great that you think about exploiting the power of the diverse society here in Macedonia, and that's a very much largely unexploited area that we need to further develop, I think. So let us now move on practically the reason why we are here. You stood as honorary president of the 2016 International Charity Bazaar, organized by Macedonia Welcome Center.
Right.
So in your opinion, why is charity work and civic engagement so important for today's society, and how could you inspire and empower people in Macedonia to be more engaged and more charitable in their daily lives?
Well, I think it's not just today's society which benefits from charitable engagement by people in society. I think it's always been the case, and I think that is for several important reasons. One is that, unlike the view that has developed perhaps in the last few generations, that government must do everything for the people, there is an absolute limit to what government can do. And many of the things which go on in society, which make society a better place for us, make the environment a better place for us, which support the weaker in society, that depends on support of individuals who are motivated for all sorts of different reasons to do it. So it's always been important, and it remains important today for that to happen. That's one thing. Another point I'd make is that society benefits in many different ways when you have a healthy and productive voluntary sector, if you like. It's not just that that the environment can be improved or that weaker members of society can be supported, the people who actually volunteer for these things themselves get a lot of motivation and energy out of it. It's very much a virtuous circle. You help someone out or you help to achieve something, and that motivates you to do more. And I've seen this in many cases. I myself had a particular moment in my life when our second daughter, Florence, was born with Down syndrome. And that introduced us to a whole range of charitable initiatives in society, which inspired me and certainly inspired Veronique, my wife, and all of our children in the same sort of direction. I'm a firm and committed believer that society, that one of the quickest ways to success in a society is to stimulate and support and develop that part of it which provides voluntary
Could you
support.
tell us more about your opinion of the charity sector here in Macedonia? How could you engage and inspire people here to be more charitable, to devote more time to charity?
Well, I've seen many initiatives going on since I came here, which not only are charitable enterprises themselves, but serve to motivate and encourage other people to get involved in it. One of those is an initiative for Macedonian businesses to get involved more in corporate social responsibility, so to get more involved in initiatives which help the environment or help disabled people or help in any way that benefits society. And that kind of thing can have a very strong motivating effect when people see the benefit that a business can bring, or when they see the company they work for doing something good, they can be motivated themselves to do something else. So I'm very optimistic that that kind of thing will feed this virtuous circle of encouraging other people to do more and more voluntary work in society. We have ourselves in the British Embassy been engaged in corporate social responsibility projects, including helping to renovate an orphanage in Prilep shortly after I arrived here. And Veronique, my wife, has been very engaged with a number of people, and our very clear picture of what's going on in Macedonia is that there is a steadily growing number of people who really who understand the benefit of this and want to help.
Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, moving on to this great charity event that we touched upon, that's the International Charity Bazaar, the Macedonia Welcome Center International Charity Bazaar. The funds this year, so the Charity Bazaar will be organized this year as well. The funds will go to the Skopje-based state school for blind and visually impaired children and youth called Dimitar Vlakov. So I know for a fact that you have organized and attended the Paralympic and Olympic Games in London, and I'm sure you have met many blind athletes there. Could you tell us a story or an anecdote that can inspire and empower blind children and youth here in Macedonia? And in your opinion, how should they see themselves in order to be self-sufficient individuals and contributing members of our society? I'm talking about blind children and youth here.
Yes. Well, I'd like to tell you about a friend that I made when I was working for the Olympic and Paralympic Organising Committee. A British guy called Chris Holmes. Now, Chris went blind overnight when he was 14 years old. He went to bed as a fully seeing, normal 14-year-old boy and woke up the next morning and couldn't see. And of course, you can imagine, I mean, that is just the most shocking thing to happen to you. And it set him back quite badly for some time, but he pulled himself up and got on with his life. And with, of course, support from his family and from others around him, he completed his time at school. He applied to Cambridge University and got a place there to study law. He qualified as a lawyer. And all the time he pursued his passion outside work for swimming. and got into the British Paralympic swimming team, and is now Britain's greatest ever Paralympian, in that he's won more medals than any other British Paralympian over the years. I met Chris when he was director of the Paralympic Games at London 2012, and it was quite extraordinary to see him in action. This is a man who cannot see anything at all, and yet managed to deliver the best Paralympic Games the world has ever seen. And it was through his leadership and his inspiration and his determination to get on with things that this happened. And for me, I think there can be no better example of how, given the right support and given the right motivation and determination, something like blindness, however enormous it is for you as an individual, however difficult it is, needn't be a stop to your life, needn't be a block to achieving things.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope we will see Mr. Holmes here in Macedonia sometime. So I'm wondering, what is your opinion? What should blind children and youth here do to become more independent, more self-sufficient, more contributing members? Do you have a message for them or an advice for them?
Well, my advice would be to find someone that they can look up to as an inspiration for how they can shape their lives. And you know, I mean, why not you, Milica? I mean, here you are interviewing me. I've seen you get around Skopje, live your life in a very full way, and there's no reason why a blind person can't do that. It of course requires support, but at the very heart of it it's about, I suspect you can answer this question better than I can actually, but it's about ambition and determination, and setting your sights on achieving something and working until you do that.
Well, actually, you're right, Your Excellency. I'm always trying to motivate other blind people to serve as a role model, if you will, so that they could become more independent. And if you would look up to me and, see me as an example how they can succeed in their lives with hard work and determination, of course. So, moving on to the last but not less important question. How do you view the mission and activities of Dobre Doide Macedonia Welcome Center? What future role can it aspire to have?
Well, I think Dobre Doide Macedonia Welcome Center has already proved its worth. It's a great organisation for diplomats who come here from overseas. It helps them settle in, and it helps them to live a fulfilled life here in this wonderful country. But it also plays a very important second role, which is about bringing the community together for charitable support for good causes. And the cause this year, the School for the Blind in Skopje, is a very good example of that, because the centre will, through its organisation and its efforts, bring people together to raise money to allow the school to continue to support children here in Macedonia who are blind. And so I think for those two reasons, the support for the diplomats and the support for local people who perhaps need a bit more support, the Dobre Doide Centre is really very welcome.
So what future role can it aspire to have? How do you see it developing in the future?
Well, I see it developing in that way of doing more of the same thing. Mm-hmm. It can continue to support the local diplomatic scene, and by developing, by bringing those diplomats together in charitable endeavours, it can also help local people. And I think that there's plenty of scope for expanding that activity in the future.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you very much for bearing with me and for doing the interview with me. I hope we will see each other again at the Charity Bazaar and do another interview after the event when we see how the funds are distributed to the school and what the pupils will do thanks to this support from all the embassies and diplomatic mission under the auspices of Macedonia Welcome Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's been a very enjoyable interview.